seventh mystery of relationship, the seventh Essene mirror, from the perspective of the ancients, was the most subtle and for some the most difficult. This is the mirror that asks us to allow for the possibility that each experience of life, regardless of its outcome, is perfect in its nature. Regardless of whether or not we achieve the lofty goals that have been set by others, we're invited to view our accomplishments in life without comparing them to anything else, without any external reference. The only way that we may view ourselves in failure or success is when we measure our accomplishments to an external yardstick. And the question then arises, what is it that we hold ourselves accountable to? What is it that we use as our yardstick of accomplishment? From the perspective of this mirror, we're asked to allow for the possibility that all aspects of our lives, each aspect of our personal life, whether it's our body shape or our body weight, or our academic or business or athletic achievements, are perfect as they stand. And we will see that they are, in fact, that way, and can only be judged when they are compared to an external reference. We're invited to allow for ourselves to be that reference. The last mirror the ancients considered the most subtle mirror, and to share with you this mirror, I'm going to share it in a couple different ways, a couple different stories. One of my last years in the corporate environment, I shared an office with a woman because our office space was limited. So we had very different functions and simply shared space together, and because there was no competition, we became very good friends. We just simply spoke with one another, went to lunch together a lot. One day we came back from lunch and she picked up her voicemail, and as she was listening to her messages, I saw her face turn sheet white and she sat down, and I said, "What happened?" And she shared with me a story, and I'm going to share that story with you now to illustrate. She had just had a friend that was her age that had a young daughter. This daughter had graduated from high school just a couple of years earlier. A beautiful young woman, was extremely gifted in many areas. She was very athletic, she excelled at academics, she was a wonderful artist, and she chose to become a model when she graduated from high school, and her parents supported her in that choice. She had done some modeling, done very well. There's a modeling school in New York City, and had just completed a series of jobs, and it appeared that 2 years out of high school she was on her way to a pretty successful modeling career. Well, after the first couple of jobs, the modeling agencies began to say, for this kind of work, you'll have to change your appearance a little bit. And they started with some obvious things. And they, even at her young age, they did some tucks around her midline. They enlarged her breasts, relatively common kinds of plastic surgery. Her parents supported her in that, and they said, well, that's what this industry takes. That's what it takes. Well, it wasn't long before the modeling agencies began asking for more extreme forms of modification. And for example, she had a really cute little overbite when she'd smile. And they said, well, you can't have an overbite and be a model. So they asked her, and she did, underwent a procedure where her jaws were broken and reset, wired shut. And the idea was that the overbite would be gone. And to be honest, I saw before and after pictures. I could see very little difference. I really could see very little difference, and I thought the overbite was kind of nice. Well, while her jaws had been wired, of course, she was on limited diet. She lost quite a bit of weight, and which is generally desirable in the modeling industry. And as she lost that weight, some of these ribs, the lower ribs, floating ribs, began to stick out more than they had before. And the modeling people said, well, that's no problem. We can address that surgically. And they did. They went in and took out these 2 floating ribs on either side. And something began to happen with her. And maybe you've seen this before. Body weight kind of goes in modes. I was a competitive runner for almost 20 years. And there were some times I could eat anything, no matter what it was. And I just couldn't keep weight on my body. And there were other times I could think about eating and not do it, and I would gain weight. And your body kind of goes into a mode. You can stop eating for a while and you'll still maintain a constant weight, or maybe even gain weight. And you can begin to lose weight, and then you say, okay, well, that's enough. I'll start eating again, and your body is still in a lose weight mode, and it keeps going. And that's what happened to this woman. She began to lose weight and was in a lose weight mode. And the phone call that my friend had that morning was from the young girl's mother. Her daughter had just died in the hospital from complications of malnutrition. And my question was, why did this happen? On certain airlines, I won't mention airline names, but certain airlines you have to go through Dallas before you go anywhere else. So when I went to Toronto, I had to go from Albuquerque to Dallas to get to Toronto, or to Kansas City to go to Dallas. Well, if you've been to DFW, you know Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. It's a huge airport, and there's a tram system that takes you from concourse to concourse, in theory, when it's up and working. And when it isn't working, it's a wonderful system. It really works well. Typically what happens is we come in on the end of Gate 6 and we go out on Gate 44, and there's a good half mile, I know, or more between the two. And on this particular day, we were at the bottom of a large escalator waiting for the trains to come by. And there was a couple that was standing next to me. There's about a 3-minute wait between trains. There was a couple standing next to me, an elderly couple, and apparently the gentleman was hard of hearing. And this couple had an ongoing dialogue, a constant dialogue, where they were, between themselves, where they were evaluating everyone around them. And apparently, it's something they had just always done. It seemed very comfortable for them. And as people would come in, they'd say, "Oh, look at who dressed that man this morning? Look at her. Why does she do that? Oh, look at that earring." Well, I was standing here. They were standing here, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw an extremely large woman coming down the escalator. I had a client at one time that weighed about 450, and I know that this woman was real close to 400 pounds. She was coming down the escalator, and she was holding an old-fashioned suitcase, old linoleum with brass fittings on the side, hard shell. It was 115 in Dallas that day. And I knew that for whatever reason she was traveling, she must have had a good reason, because travel could not have been easy for her. The heat, the accommodations of the seats, her legs were swollen, her ankles, and she was carrying this funny little suitcase. And she came up and stood right next to us, and this couple continued to do what they'd been doing. And because the gentleman was hard of hearing, as he was sharing with his wife, we all heard, as he said to his wife, "Look at that woman, isn't that terrible? Why doesn't she do something with herself? She should be ashamed of herself for coming in public like that." Now this is one of those rare opportunities. I was here, the couple was here, and the heavy woman was here. And I believe on an unspoken level, she consented to me looking at her eyes, because she looked right at me. So I looked into her eyes, and she never said a word, and that's how I know that she heard everything that happened. She never said a word. And while we were waiting for that train, tears welled up in her eyes. And I could see she was really fighting just to hold it back, and her face got very red. She'd been hurt by what she'd heard. We got in the train, the couple sat next to me, and I spoke with them, and they were really a nice couple. They were not malicious. I don't think there was a malicious intent. It was just a very unconscious thing that they had done with themselves. And in that moment, what I knew was that the three of us had had a rare opportunity. The woman had had the opportunity to hear herself judged. The couple had had the opportunity to judge someone else, and I had the opportunity to witness. Both of these stories illustrate the seventh Essene mystery of relationship. And it's the mystery of allowing for perfection in the imperfections of life. The young woman that lost her life, my question is, what standard was she holding herself accountable to that made her feel that she was imperfect and must change the body that she was given in this life to accommodate? What standard? What did she use as a yardstick? The couple that saw this large woman, me describing her as a large woman to you right now. Until you compare your experience or your life to an external reference, how can it be anything other than perfect? And my question to you is to please be aware of what it is that you hold yourself accountable to. What do you use as your yardstick in life? How do you know when you've succeeded or failed at something in life? I could share with you a sheet. We could do this. I could give you a sheet, and I could give you a list of criteria, and I could say, tell me about your athletic capabilities, your academic capabilities, your capabilities in communication, in romance. That's always a good one. Are you a good lover? Tell me about all these things. And I'd give you about 15 seconds to give me an answer, because it doesn't make any difference what you answer. If you see yourself as anything other than perfect, what have you compared yourself to? How do you know that you are doing anything other than perfection until you reference outside of yourself? As I live this mirror, if I am giving you the best I can do in this moment until I compare myself to someone else, this is perfect, and this is what this moment is. This is, for the Essenes, the most subtle, because we are so quick to judge ourselves, and we are our own most difficult judges. So what I'll say to you is, I'll invite you, look at your life, look at the places in your life where you sense that you're not happy with yourself. The only way that can happen is if you've not done your best, or if you have done your best and you've compared it to someone else. What do you use as your yardstick? In our culture, what is our yardstick? We're compared to this man. You know what this man said when he was here? He said, you think the things I'm doing now are cool, wait till you see what you're about to do in 2,000 years. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. He said, don't hold me. Don't hold me on the pedestal. He said, you are far, far greater than I, as you realize the power that lives within you. The power of thought, feeling, and emotion, and what you'll do with it. So that's the seventh Essene mirror of relationship, the mirror of perfection. Well, these 7 mirrors of relationship, powerful mirrors, powerful insights into why we have lived the kinds of lives and had the relationships that we have had. The Essenes remind us that we will all go through each of these mirrors at some point in our lives, whether we recognize them or not. Often we'll go through many mirrors simultaneously. That's the masters that we are. That's the masters that we become in this lifetime, is that we move through the mirrors and we move forward with life each day possibly without even recognizing why we're doing these things. Well, it would be nice to have a beautiful neon sign flash to us first thing in the morning and say, on this day, after you finished your breakfast and after you sent the family off on their day, you may begin your dark night of the soul. And the reality is that life does not happen to us in that way. We're invited to know ourselves in the presence of others through our relationships. And as those relationships are reconciled, we become the benefit of that healing. And it is that benefit that we carry with us through the waking dream of life as we walk between the worlds, heaven and earth.